if you're in B2B, do not over like develop your product and just go to market and try to sell it. No matter if you have nothing and you need to like, fix everything in the backend and you just have like a very, very simple Wix front. But go and sell it. Go and sell it. Go to customers, try to sell it, try to get someone to pay for the concept you're trying to build the the most basic mockup you can, because sometimes I see even too often entrepreneurs who are telling me, yeah, I worked like a year and a half on developing this product, and then I'm like, okay, like how many dollars did you sell? And they're like, no, we're not selling yet, we're still developing. And it's a big mistake, because like it's really, really hard to get product market fit. This is what makes most startups fail.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Omer Glass. And Omer, in his own words, high school was pretty typical. He liked physics and math. Grew up in Israel, and so served the 3-year mandatory service in the special forces, and then went off and studied behavioral economics in college. Started a nonprofit as well as or did some startup work in college as well. And then afterwards, worked for a management consultancy and traveled around the U.S. and the EU and Turkey and other places. And then started a side hustle for a learning development firm, and then went on to be an entrepreneur on his own. Did some startups that failed before moving on to where he's at now, which is more of a success. So with that much as a introduction, welcome on the podcast, Omer.
Thank you so much, Devin.
So I just gave a quick introduction to a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack that a bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in high school, like in physics and math?
Yeah, so I think again, like we can go even further back, but yeah, I think since relatively young age, I was just excited about kind of like the world's mysteries, and physics was kind of like how the world works. So I got really geeky about it, like reading physics books, Stephen Hawking was my idol, stuff like that. So yeah, math and physics. I think it's a good foundation, although like I don't use any math or physics, but it gets your brain like accumulated to thinking analytically, which is that required as a founder.
All right, no, definitely makes sense. And so you start that out in high school, and you enjoy those studies, and then I'm not overly familiar, just vague or just a little bit familiar, but in Israel you have mandatory military service, I think, for all young men and young women, and so you went off and did that. Is that right?
That's right. So yeah, it's kind of like I think you have the Netflix series Fauda, which will be the closest experience that you will get to like how it's like. Of course, it's Netflix, so it's not 1-to-1, but I think it teaches you. It's a funny thing. Like most people, again, unless you go to the military and you basically volunteer, or like not volunteer, it's like a job. It's hard for most people to imagine themselves like just risking their lives and like doing crazy shit, especially if you're like in the infantry or special forces. And because you must do it, there is something you do not ask yourself, do I want to do it, do I not want to do it? And it's kind of like a very embedded in the Israel culture to go to the best place you can and to really like, put your life on the line for your country. And I think that this is part of the reason why Israel it was just announced, it's kind of like the number 5 like startup city in the world. Like after basically the Valley, and then New York and London, and then I think it's like Tel Aviv or something like that. Maybe I forgot. I just one. LA is the third, and then Tel Aviv is basically the fourth or fifth because two number twos. And I think this is a lot because like the army service, it's kind of like it just teaches you to never give up and to do whatever it takes. And yeah, so I think it's
No, makes sense, and sounds like it was a good opportunity to learn different skills and to grow. And so you did that, I think, said for 3 years, and then afterwards you went off to college and studied behavioral economics. Is that right?
Yeah, so first I traveled. I traveled a lot. I think I'm a very big fan of you know growth in general. Part of the growth is professional growth, so we work, but part of it is just to explore and to go on adventure. And yeah, so I spent after the army 9 months traveling like in East Asia. And then I did it three more times afterwards. Like I did kind of like a between jobs. Um, yeah, and then I went to study behavioral economics. I did the master's there, and during college, I started a nonprofit and I started my first startup. The nonprofit was okay; it went really well. The startup didn't, but it was the first glorious failure that you have before. Like you need to fail. Seth Godin says that you need to fail 30 times before you get it right for the first time. So this was basically my number one.
No, it sounds like it was a good experience. As you get, first of all, traveling is always fun and always, or great when you get the opportunity to do so. But then as you come back, you start the nonprofit. Now, what was the nonprofit geared towards, or kind of, what area did it service?
Yeah, so it was basically it was when I did my master's, and so I saw two things. So I studied in the city from a low socioeconomic background, and with me studied a lot of people who were like partying a lot. So I said, okay, so the partying people who are students, smart students, can contribute more like to the kids in the city, and the kids need some help because like they come from a less fortunate background than ourselves. And so I basically I went to the Department of Economics where I studied, convinced them to give some like points, kind of like they do another course, which will be the volunteering course where they will teach entrepreneurship and behavioral economics for ninth or 10th graders in the city. I went to like the local municipality. I convinced them. I ran a pilot for a year where I taught the 10th graders at this class. And then other students did it. And then it became big. I didn't want really to start like, all the the legalities of a nonprofit. So I just kind of like I raised money and then I folded it under another nonprofit. And then I basically exited with a lot of joy, of course, no money, but it was like a fulfilling exit.
Hmm. Well, sounds like it was a good start into a much longer entrepreneurial journey. And so you did that, did the nonprofit, did some, startup work, kind of dipped your toe in the water while you were still going to college. And then I think after you graduated, at least for a period of time, you went and did management consulting and got to continue to travel and see different parts of the country. Is that right?
Correct. So yeah, I worked for a management consultancy for 5 years. So I did like, a good period of time there. Um, and yeah, I traveled a lot. So I worked in the UK, where, by the way, I met my partner. And then most of us worked in the UK back then. I worked, like you said, in the US, in Turkey, in Singapore, Germany, with like the largest companies in the world, which was kind of fun. You learn a lot in management consulting, but basically you learn like a strategy and also operations, which are both relevant for startup CEO later on. And in this consultancy, I always had passion for like growth, so I asked to be involved in this company's learning development efforts outside of like my job as a consultant.
Hmm.
And so I started like our internal mentoring program. and I brought in a lot of workshops. And yeah, so I invested some time and kind of like learned the space of learning and development for the first time. For the second time, actually, the startup that failed before, it was an online school for career development, B2C, and probably that's why it failed. Like probably I'm better with B2B than B2C, and the business model fits better at B2B.
No, makes perfect sense. So now got an opportunity to continue to see the world, go to different countries, do the management consulting. Now at some point you started to kind of shift back to wanting to do your own thing, going back down the entrepreneurial path. And I think as we talked a bit before, you tried some things out that failed, and then you are currently landed on something that's bit more successful or in your wheelhouse, or seems to be gaining traction. So kind of walk us through as you or kind of move back towards entrepreneurship. What did that look like?
Yeah, so I think that's the most interesting period, because usually people talk about their success as entrepreneurs, and you talk about like what you did in your career, but then there comes the period that can last, like, if you're fortunate, 3 months. If you're less fortunate, it can take a decade, when you're just looking and exploring. And there are a lot of different ingredients in eventually finding a startup that will work. So you need to find a partner, you need to find an idea, you need to find something that, like, you need to work on it, to sell it, to develop a product. So there are a lot of things and a lot of hustles. So basically, it looked like a trial and a trial and a trial and a trial and a trial, which is complicated, and kind of like frustrating after you try something. Okay, it's not really interesting, and you're trying something, you, like, the partner decides that they do not want to work on it, etc. So I probably tried, I would say, between 10 to 15 things in different levels of like seriousness. Um, but some of them became really serious. Like, for example, I connected to a franchise of Avis, and we started basically a car sharing startup, for example. And so yeah, we like raised money. We had 8 people. We had a software. We had the first customers, and then the franchise just decided to shut it off because they were acquired by another company. Happened. So there were a lot of instances and a lot of different business models, but I think the main thing, I decided that I want to start something of my own. I want to work on something that excites me, and I want to work with good people, good partners. So I kind of like had a list of people I would like to partner with. One of them was Dan, my current partner, and also Isaac, who is our co-founder and CTO. And Dan and I know each other since 2013, when we met in the UK. And then Dan basically called me one day, and he told me a story. So he told me, hey, Omer. So he worked back then in a fast growing startup, 200 people, that was growing real fast, but they had an attrition problem. So people were leaving them. And he tried to understand why. So he did some exit interviews, some like pulse surveys, and it appeared that people were leaving because they didn't feel the company invests enough in their development, like professional development. And so I said, good, I have a problem. I have money. Let's throw money on the problem. So he did. And but the interesting thing is, so he brought a lot of learning development solutions, like e-learning content and workshops and lectures and stuff like that. And then he tried to measure within 6 months if any impact has been achieved, if attrition dropped, and even if people like do less escalations and stuff like that. He's also an ex-consultant, a very analytical person. And the surprising fact was that not only it didn't improve, it even got worse. So then he called me and he asked me, and he tells me the story, and he tells, listen, Omar, I give up. How do you create effective employee development? And then my intuitive response was, I don't think anyone really knows, because they do not really use data. Like, in order to improve in everything, like, in a business, what do you do? You do something, you measure it. If it's good, you scale. If it's not good, you change something or you kill it. And
Hmm.
apparently they're not doing it in learning development enough. They're just usually measuring like participation rates, completion rates of learning development, or even like a self like feedback by the participant. But all of them are highly biased. You do not really understand if you're making any progress. So I said, okay, this space is interesting, and it will be disrupted. Just a question if it's us. So we said let's start working on it, and that's how Growth Space was basically founded.
Hmm. No, sounds like it was a great journey, and took a bit of going back and forth. Sounds like you had some good partners or other people to bounce ideas off, collaborate with, and get the business going. So now you guys, kind of dove in, got that going, and started it out. Now walk us through, as the business is getting going, and you finally kind of land on that as a idea, the direction, and something that you think can build a business around. Did it take off like a rocket ship and it was just money raining down from the skies? Was it bumpy and always on the verge of bankruptcy, somewhere in the middle, or kind of how did it go, and where's it at today?
So I think from inception, the nice thing is some startups are pivoting and pivoting and pivoting, and we understood what we're going to build. So we said, okay, we want to basically build the world's first, what we call human to human development platform, because you can develop employees with like online content that you consume at your own pace, things like a LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, a masterclass,
Hmm.
YouTube, even your learning management system. And then there is the big space of when people help other people grow. So think sales training, management workshops, think coaching, think mentoring. So there are a lot of ways in organizations that people help other people grow. Sometimes the people are from within the organization, sometimes from external to the organization. And so our idea and basically the direction kept like just it was the same from the beginning. But the biggest thing that really helped us with our journey was the COVID. So we started the company just a few months before COVID hit, like late 2019. And the model was basically online. And the problem back then is like 99% of the human to human development was face to face,
Hmm.
because you want the sales training. Okay, good. So you bring someone from 10-mile radius around your office and you do a sales training, management training, coaching, etc. And and then COVID hit and everything went basically online, and we were already there. So COVID basically gave us like, a kick in the butt, and it really helped the sales and helped like interest. And since then, it's been, we're touch with a relatively easy sale. So, and usually, like I always share that I never we created an investor deck just once in 2019, and we're supposed to be around by now. We're right there like at $44 million. And so the business model was good. Customers were buying, which was always our focus. We built a really interesting technology, really deep technology around data and taxonomy in order to enable all of that. And of course, AI before the days of ChatGPT. So yeah, investors were keen to partner with us, and customers were keen to partner with us. So, and the journey has been good so far.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of a good journey behind you, and yet a lot of good pathway ahead. So that's awesome. So, well, that was we've kind of reached the present day of your journey, and always a good time to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
So eventually, everything is people. So the success or failure of your business will basically be derived also by the idea and the partners and the product market fit and stuff like that. But hiring good or bad executive, I think it would be the number one cause for success or failure in the specific function. So we had some great successes, and again, most of our executive team has been there with us for a while. But some of them were miserable decisions by us, not because again the people were bad, but just because it wasn't a good fit to our stage, what we need, like their skills, their required skills, etc. And so yeah, we had some bad choices. And what I learned from it is basically to always do not rely on references, but try to back channel. So back channeling is basically when you find someone like that the executive you're trying to hire works for, and then you find a way for them to tell you the truth. Because let's say I will reach out like to you and you do not know me about your employee. You like your employee, but you're better than you like me, right? So you will tell me, yeah, like John is great. And like, although John was not so great, maybe he had some integrity problems, or maybe he was a little bit lazy, or it's not really well-rounded in what you're trying to understand. But if I will find an investor of yours, for example, you will tell the investor the truth, or a colleague or an ex-manager. So again, back channeling is one of the best things I learned, I think, in this business. It's kind of hard because you need the connections and you need to get to the right people who will speak with the right people. But I cannot stress how important it is. And we did it with like all of our recent executive hires. And so far, it's been really successful.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I think, and kind of going back to, I think one of the hard ones is when you're looking at it, hiring, firing people, managing, putting in the right positions. That's one that you can read as many books about it. You can talk with a lot of people about it, and you can get helpful or ideas on it and advice. But at the end of the day, that's always a hard one that you get a lot of times just learn with hard knocks, and you get to learn some of those lessons and some of the mistakes you make along the way. And then you get to improve with each new hire and each new step. So I think that's a great, easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from. Second question now that I like to ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
So it will always be, again, depends if it's B2B or B2C, but let's assume it's a B2B. Because again, I'm a better B2B expert than a B2C. So if you're in B2B, do not over like develop your product and just go to market and try to sell it. No matter if you have nothing and you need to like, fix everything in the backend and you just have like a very, very simple Wix front. But go and sell it. Go and sell it. Go to customers. Try to sell it. Try to get someone to pay for the concept you're trying to build. Build the most basic mockup you can, because sometimes I see even too often entrepreneurs who are telling me, yeah, I worked like a year and a half on developing this product. And then I'm like, okay, like how many dollars did you sell? And they're like, no, we're not selling yet. We're still developing. And it's a big mistake because like it's really, really hard to get product market fit. This is what makes most startups fail. Like you're trying to build the right product for the right market and basically have like the sense of basically where the market draws you, that it's almost easy to sell because you're selling something that people really need. And it's so easy not to do it because it's hard to really go out there and sell. So I think this would be my number one tip. Just go out and sell it. Do not overthink of like how it looks. It will look bad. It will look bad in first like couple of or like 3 years. But just go to market, sell it, come back with the feedback, and then like build your product. So customers first.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway for people as they get started in a startup or a small business. So with that, now as we wrap towards the end of the podcast, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
So Omer Glass on LinkedIn.
All right.
or
Simple.
growthspace.com, which is our website.
All right, couple great ways to connect. As simple and easy as that. Well, I definitely encourage the audience to reach out, support a great business, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again, Omer, for coming on the podcast, and definitely wish your journey success. Now, for all of you, the listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just reach out to us. Go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Omer, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you so much.